Hello, I'm Aaron. Welcome to the show. We're going to be reviewing some of the stuff that went on during question period today on Parliament Hill. Some interesting stuff has been going on this week, so we might as well jump right into it and take a peek. We're learning as we go about how the sausage is made by the clowns in the circus. Let's take a peek.
Have your attention, order. It's with a heavy heart that I rise to inform members of my resignation.
This is
as
pretty
Speaker
big
of the House
news.
of Commons.
Big
It
news.
has been my greatest honor as a parliamentarian to have been elected by you, my peers, to serve as the Speaker of the House of Commons for the 43rd and 44th Parliament. I have acted as your humble servant of this House, carrying out the important responsibilities of this position to the very best of my abilities. Je tiens à vous remercier.
I would like to thank you,
Just
my
taking it like a
colleagues,
champ, I guess.
for your support and for your collegiality during my term as Speaker.
This House is above any of us. Therefore, I must step down as your
Zooming
Speaker.
in.
I reiterate my profound regret for my error in recognizing an individual in the House during the joint address to Parliament of President Zelensky. That public recognition has caused pain to individuals and communities, including the Jewish community in Canada and around the world, in addition to survivors of Nazi atrocities in Poland, among other nations.
Seems like a sincere apology. I don't know what you'd
accept
say.
full responsibility for my actions. My resignation is effective at the end of the sitting day tomorrow, Wednesday, September 27th, to allow preparations for the election of a new Speaker. Until that time, the Deputy Speakers will chair the House proceedings. Thank you. Merci.
Substitute teacher. Substitute teacher's coming in. Look, here he goes. So yeah, that's some pretty big news on Parliament Hill. Now I guess we'll jump right into question period.
Audio gets pulled up.
So Chris Donchema is our new, or is the Speaker of the House today.
The leader of the official opposition.
Here at Poilievre gets big applause every time. Seems really popular.
The Liberal Speaker resigned after the massive shame and embarrassment of having recognized a Nazi in the House of Commons. Our international reputation, though, is in the Prime Minister's hands. Diplomatic and intelligence services could have vetted the list of guests, and in fact, that vetting is the Prime Minister's responsibility. Today, the Prime Minister needs to take responsibility in order to reverse the massive damage done to our international reputation. Will he rise in this place and apologize for this massive and shameful
It would
failure?
seem that the Conservatives are not
The Honourable House
satisfied
Leader.
with
Thank you, Mr.
just the Speaker stepping down. They want an
First,
apology at least
It is
from the
important
Prime Minister's
to
office.
highlight that the Speaker of the House of Commons is independent and elected by all members of this House. I thank the Speaker for taking responsibility for his actions.
Thank you
As
for
I
taking
said
this one
yesterday,
for the
and as he
team.
repeated just a few moments ago, it was his decision. He accepts responsibility for it, and I think that was the honorable and the right thing to do. The Honorable Opposition Leader. Yes, but the Prime Minister's intelligence and protocol services had the right to ask for lists of all those who would be recognized. What's more, the responsibility to defend Canada's reputation, that is the Prime Minister's responsibility. We are currently experiencing the worst blow to our reputation in all of our history. So where's the Prime Minister? Where's he hiding? Why won't he rise in the House of Commons to defend Canadians' reputation?
Go get him, Peter. Go get him. Stick it to him. Ask those questions that you never get answers to.
Remind the
Keep
honourable
asking.
members whether we can. We cannot say whether someone is here or not in the chamber.
You're a substitute teacher. Easy.
On that line,
Just
very
kidding.
closely.
Substitute
The honourable,
teachers, just kidding.
House Leader for the government.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The opposition leader knows full well the Speaker of the House resigned today. He accepted responsibility for the decision that he made on his own. He alone decided to invite and recognize that individual. As all members of this House know full well, it was shameful for us as members. It was shameful for Canadians. He took responsibility, and that was the honorable decision.
They are just trying to stick it to poor old Tony,
has
man.
Taken the fall.
Yeah,
for
the
this
exactly. We were saying this yesterday.
International shame and embarrassment. But the Prime Minister's protocol and intelligence units had the right to ask for the list of all those who would be present and recognized around a war leader from a country that is trying to defend its freedom from not only an invasion, but a propaganda war. The Prime Minister did not carry out that responsibility, and now our nation's reputation is in tatters. Will he stand up and apologize to Canadians, to the Jewish community, to the Ukrainian people, and to the entire world for this mess that he helped create?
Old Peter wants him to apologize to everybody.
The Honourable Government
Everyone.
House Leader.
Poor old Katrina.
I feel that I have to remind the Leader of the Opposition this, although he knows it very well himself, that the Speaker of the House of Commons is independent.
Where is Trudeau?
Voted upon by all of the members of Parliament, and he is the Speaker of all parliamentarians. Mr. Speaker, we know, and the Leader opposite knows, that this was the decision solely of the Speaker of the House of Commons. He chose to invite this individual. He chose to recognize him without informing the government or the Ukrainian delegation.
Poor
This is
Tony,
highly embarrassing.
going down all by
I
himself.
accept his resignation, and I'm glad that he did it.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Minister says he's not responsible for our diplomatic reputation, even though that is precisely the job of the head of government. Like when he says he's not responsible for the inflationary spending that led prices and interest rates to rise faster than at any time in history. He's not responsible for housing costs doubling after he promised to lower them. He's not responsible for dressing up in racist costumes so many times he can't remember that it's all Canadians that needed to learn a lesson from his personal conduct. And now he says he's not responsible to vet the very people that come into contact with a visiting head of state. Is it that he's not responsible or that he's irresponsible?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
He asks the right questions.
I would
Gets the
posit
wrong
that
person
the Leader of
answering.
The opposition is being very irresponsible right now in his accusations, when in fact he knows the truth, and it's why every party in this House has asked for the resignation, which has now been received by the Speaker of the House, because it was his decision and his decision alone to invite this individual and to recognize him in this chamber. The Leader of the Opposition knows this. He is irresponsibly politicizing this issue. This is something that has brought shame and embarrassment to all of Parliament and indeed all of Canadians, and the Speaker did the honourable thing in resigning. Thank you.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Well, I am responsible enough to show up for work, Mr. Speaker.
Whoa, good one.
I mean this
Go get him, PP. Go get him.
Has there ever been a greater diplomatic embarrassment in the history of our country? I mean it literally. In coffee shops and gyms and businesses and boardrooms around the world, people are reading about this massive and shameful disgrace that unfolded under the watch of a Liberal Speaker and a Liberal Prime Minister. And yet, he can't even show up for work. Where is he, and why is he hiding under a rock today?
Everybody has a bad day. You kind of still have to go to work. Like, Justin's just hiding. He's just hiding. Where's he been? Get him under control, Chris. Yeah.
I'm just going to stand here for a few minutes.
I'm just a temporary guy. I'm just going to stand here. Come on, look at him. This. All right, well.
Are we ready? Okay.
Oh,
Underlining
sarcasm.
whether someone is here or not is not allowed by the rules of this House. The Honourable Government House Leader, if she wants to answer it. I'll give her the option.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is precisely why the Speaker of the House announced his resignation, because he took responsibility for his actions that have hurt parliamentarians and have hurt all Canadians and indeed Canada's reputation. That is why.
How long do you think it's going to take for her to start bringing up her Jewish roots? Guaranteed she will.
Heard a word of support for Ukraine from the leader of the opposition until.
It's what I would do if I was desperate. So I said, she's desperate. She's going to have to lean on her Jewish heritage. At some point, you got to garner sympathy somehow. Order! Pretty exciting
Long day, looks like.
Looks like. Out of control, Chris. Get him under control, Speaker. Woo.
Order!
Did he just do a horse like?
The honourable member for Belleuil-Chambly.
He did.
Mr. Speaker, a question more about substance than style.
What's up, Eves?
The official opposition leader and I agree on something.
He's dressed sharp.
Which is significant. The Prime Minister is not responsible for the mistake, but he is responsible for fixing it. He is head of state. It's his responsibility. So, does the Prime Minister intend to officially apologize on behalf of Canada and unfortunately still on behalf of Quebec? Does he intend to apologize to all those who suffered as a result of the dramatic and serious event
nice
which
tan,
took place in this place?
Great tie.
The Honourable Government House Leader.
And her again, go.
Mr. Speaker, I thank my colleague for his question.
Talk about your family. Your grandfather or
Speaker
something.
already apologized for the decision that he made. It was a shameful decision for all of us as members and for all Canadians.
All of us, but
It was
just
important that he take
Anthony Rodda.
responsibility for his actions and
Everybody
decisions.
but Anthony
Everyone
Rodda.
in this House called for his resignation. He did so, and that was the honourable choice.
was it?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The
Such
honourable member
honor
for
and
Belleuil-Chambly.
dishonor.
After 6 questions, it's hard to believe that the Government House Leader hasn't yet understood that the responsibility of the Prime Minister and the responsibility of the House are not one and the same. The Prime Minister needs to assume his responsibilities as head of state, as a head of government. So he needs to apologize to the Jewish community in Quebec, in Canada, and around the world. He needs to apologize to all parliamentarians and to all Canadians, and he must specifically apologize to President Zelensky because this event made him target of Russian propaganda. The Honourable Government House Leader.
Making
Thank
those
you, Mr. Speaker.
Russian propagandists
As I said yesterday,
work overtime.
I am a Canadian of Jewish origin.
Here it is. Here
I
it
am
is.
the
Okay, it was a
descendant
matter of
a
time.
Holocaust survivor. This incident hurt me
You go, girl.
personally, as it hurt all members of this House and all Canadians. The incident also hurt President Zelensky. The Speaker of the House apologized and took responsibility for his decision, which was shameful and painful for us all. He did the responsible thing by resigning. Thank you,
There's
Mr.
not much
Speaker.
more
The honourable member for
shameful
Burnaby
than
South.
what you're doing.
Yesterday, it was manufacturers'
Oh,
turn
great.
to be summoned by the Innovation
This
Minister.
clown.
The
I used to
minister
like
knows
this guy a
full
lot.
well that they have jacked up
Not
prices
anymore.
because he's only asking them
Coward.
to stabilize prices. After the meeting, the minister said that inaction is not an option, except that that is exactly what he's been doing for the past 2 years. Will the minister make a commitment to Canadian families? Will he commit to them that their Thanksgiving meal will cost less this year than it did last year? The Honourable Innovation Minister.
For real, though, nobody sports a
Mr.
turban better
Speaker,
than him.
I thank my colleague for the question. I'm happy
go.
to hear
Innovation,
that
science, and
he
industry.
also has read that we've said that inaction is not an option.
Nerd.
That is why we summoned major grocers in Canada to ask them to stabilize prices in Canada. And I expressed to them the frustration of 40 million Canadians. I told them that the number one issue that matters to Canadians is the cost of living, affordability, and grocery prices. That's why, Mr. Speaker, we tabled Bill C-56, which will address competition because we want more competition in Canada, and I hope the colleague will support that bill so that we can move forward. Liberal inaction is too costly.
We have in Halifax a very serious situation. People currently living in a campground fear they'll be homeless when it closes for the season because there's simply nowhere else for them to go. These people have worked hard, they've got jobs, some live at the campground, some work there, but there's simply no other housing for them to rent in the surrounding area. They don't have months to wait for the government to approve new housing. They'll be homeless in weeks. This is the result of a Prime Minister who could have and should have built more affordable housing, but didn't. What will the Prime Minister tell them when they're homeless in a few weeks?
The Honourable Minister of Housing.
Homeless is a problem. Oh, Charlie Slick, here we go.
Continue to invest in affordable housing,
Mr. Hanson, Sean Fraser,
province of Nova Scotia.
Nova Scotia.
I point out to the honourable member right now, as we speak, the City Council in Halifax is actually debating a motion to change the way that they permit homes to be built as a result of the Housing Accelerator Fund that's going to yield more homes for people who live in the city of
this guy is
Halifax.
the
In addition to changing the way cities build homes, we're putting incentives on the table to get more homes built, and we're going to work with jurisdictions that have local authority to figure out how we can continue to increase the affordable housing stock as we have been for the last number of years. I'm going to be pleased to work with my honourable colleague to advance solutions for some of the most vulnerable people in Canada.
Go for it. Charlie Slick.
The Speaker of the House took the fall, and the Prime Minister continues to blame everyone else. A full-blown international embarrassment for our country, for our allies, and for everything this nation did to defeat the Nazis.
Nice jacket.
Actual Nazi invited to the House of Commons, welcomed, and celebrated as a hero. And a government that vetted everyone here. The PM has called Canadian citizens Nazis. Will he muster the courage and stand up on his feet today and take responsibility?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I think we all feel
Complain about a sore back now. Go for more sympathy.
on Friday. Had anyone in this House known what the Speaker was going to do ahead of time and who this person was, I am certain that not a single
She has a
person
cute bracelet,
would
though.
have stood in this House of Commons. But the fact of the matter is, and my Conservative colleagues know this, that neither the Prime Minister nor the government nor the Ukrainian delegation or any parliamentarian in this place knew ahead of time. It was the Speaker's decision. He's taken responsibility and he has resigned. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member for Thornhill.
The minister who is now whispering was louder when she
Go
also
wound,
painted Canadians
go full blown.
as Nazis.
Get
and
upset.
she can't bring herself to apologize for an actual Nazi this government vetted. Worse even, she tried to strike it from the historical record of this House as if it never happened. A descendant of Holocaust survivors distorting the Holocaust. You should be ashamed of yourself.
It's pretty harsh. It's pretty harsh for a question period. Oh, they're standing up. I don't know that. Yeah, that's true though. It's true. It's a good argument. Blame it on Anthony Rota.
Questions and comments to be through the chair. The Honourable Member for Thornhill, you have about 5 seconds left there.
How many times I'm going to have to ask this Prime Minister for an apology that he has slandered, dishonored, and embarrassed Holocaust survivors, but I think 2 times is too many.
What an interesting haircut she has.
Mr. Speaker, while the member opposite tries to personally attack me, I will actually stay focused on the facts.
Ooh, I don't know what she's saying, but it doesn't sound pleasant.
And she knows this as well as every other member in this House, is that it was the Speaker who decided to invite this individual. It was the Speaker who acknowledged that he was going to acknowledge him in the the chamber. No one in this chamber knew ahead of time of who he was. The Speaker has taken full responsibility for this. He has resigned. It was the right thing to do. It was the honorable thing to do. And it is something that had to be done.
They only gave her one line. They should have given her more lines to deliver. Like, instead of just like, it was his fault, he said he did it, so he apologized, he resigned, and that's it. That's all they gave her.
Global Affairs, the Privy Council,
What have
the
you got?
Diplomatic Protocol Office, Parliamentary
Marty
Protective
Morantz.
Services, and the RCMP. What do they all have in common? They all have massive resources for vetting visitors to this place. The Prime Minister just threw the Speaker under the bus. But the truth is, the buck stops with him. Allowing a Nazi to be honored in this chamber has embarrassed Canada on the international stage. Shame on him for bringing shame on this chamber.
Shame.
Will the Prime Minister finally take responsibility, do the right thing, and apologize?
He will not. He will not.
Honorable Government House Leader.
Oh, the Government House Leader again. They got to get a new one.
Speaker, I will remind my
Shouldn't you resign?
because they seem to have forgotten that they also called them
they messed up on the graphic
resignation this morning because they recognized that it was actually the Speaker who did this on his own. Instead of trying to cast blame where no blame should be cast, the Speaker has taken responsibility for his actions. He has resigned. It was the honorable thing to do. It was the right thing to do after a moment in our history on Friday that was deeply embarrassing, deeply shameful for Canadians, and that has hurt all of us as parliamentarians and Canadians. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
What's going to be fun is if she comes up and
Minister and that member tried to bury this sordid affair with a motion to strike history from the record. For the sake of the 6 million Jews who perished at the hands of the Nazis, Conservatives said no. This affair has resulted in a diplomatic disaster for Canada and gives the Russian government and their illegal invasion a propaganda win. When will the PM stop trying to erase history, take responsibility for once, and apologize?
Yeah. The Honorable Government House Leader.
one of these times she's going to be asked a question that doesn't have to do with what she's speaking about and give the same answer. Exactly. Now she's giving the shortened version of the same answer.
Mr. Speaker,
I just said that.
I'll share with you a few headlines in media around the world since Friday's event. Deeply hurtful.
Go Pierre-Paul Hous.
A Nazi veteran was invited to the Canadian Parliament. Scandal in Canada. Former Nazi fighter in Canadian Parliament. Canada is the laughingstock of the world, the whole world. Will the Prime Minister stand up and apologize, or will he keep hiding? The Honourable Government House Leader. Every member of this House feels that the House Speaker's choice was unforgivable, unacceptable, and shameful to all Canadians. That's why the House Speaker apologized, took responsibility, and resigned. The Honourable Member for Charlebourg-Saint-Charles.
She has a lot of patience.
There's something the government doesn't seem to understand, Mr. Speaker, and that's that they have a responsibility. In 2015, legislative amendments were made so that the Parliamentary Protective Service is tasked with vetting visitors, for example, during the visit of foreign presidents. The Prime Minister was unable to maintain Canada's diplomatic security, so can he stand up in this House as soon as possible to apologize? The Honourable Government House Leader.
They just want an apology, Justin.
As I stated yesterday,
where are you, J-Boy?
The Parliamentary Protection Service followed all security protocols. The House Speaker was the one who was responsible for this decision to invite.
Do you not find it a little bit strange that Trudeau's not there? Like, we might be getting his Halloween costume ready, like it's getting close.
Mr. Speaker,
where's
a wave
Trudeau?
of bankruptcies awaits our small and medium enterprises if the federal government does not wake up. That's the warning that was issued on the Hill today by the Canadian Federation of Independent Business. The government is giving them 18 days to obtain bank loans, but that won't save SMEs that are up to their necks in debt. They have been struggling to repay their emergency account loans for the past 3 years. Unfortunately, what awaits them is bankruptcy. When will the government finally open a direct channel of communication with struggling businesses in order to offer them appropriate payment deferral options?
It's a good question.
The Honourable Employment Minister.
Everybody's broke. Everybody's broke.
I thank my honourable colleague for her question. About 1 million businesses were able to stay open thanks to this government's measures. We know that there has been rising inflation, there have been supply chain issues, and also the situation in Ukraine. Those are all factors which have been difficult for businesses in Canada. But we will be able to support them to keep their businesses in good standing. We support people in other ways as well, Mr. Speaker. The Canada Child Benefit, the Canada Workers Benefit. We are here for Quebec's businesses, and we will continue to be there for them. The Honourable Member for Terrebonne. Mr. Speaker, our small businesses are not asking for charity. They simply want to avoid bankruptcy while paying back what they owe. The government could sign deferred payment agreements with companies that are struggling without losing any subsidies. That way, the government could avoid closures, avoid job losses, and get back what it is owed instead of losing all of that due to a wave of bankruptcies. When will the government finally realize that being flexible with SMEs is the only fair and responsible way out of this crisis? The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, let us be clear and let us look at the
He
facts.
does dress well.
We are here to support businesses. We supported them throughout the pandemic. Now we're on the other end of the pandemic, and we've been very clear about what we will do to help businesses which used CEBA. We are there for them, for entrepreneurs, to support them. We supported entrepreneurs, and we will continue to support them. The Honourable Member for Abitibi-Témiscamingue. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
It's a rock and roller right here.
Nearly 2,000
Sebastian.
SMEs in Quebec
Not
have
surprised.
already declared bankruptcy in the past year, and
The
according
block,
to the Canadian Federation of Independent Business, this is just the start. 1 in 5 businesses is contemplating closing in the next year. The elephant in the room, Mr. Speaker, is that 60% of bankruptcies in Canada are in Quebec, because small business is Quebec's economic model. We're going to have to pay for our entrepreneurial spirit and our support for local entrepreneurs if the government does not show some flexibility. When will the government wake up and stop pushing our SMEs into bankruptcy?
Good question.
The Honourable Employment Minister. Mr. Speaker, before I was in politics, I was an entrepreneur. I know what it's like to have to pay business bills, to make sure that you have enough money to pay your employees. I have a lot of empathy for Quebec's businesses. That's why our government was very clear about its plan to help those repaying CEBA loans.
Have you ever had to have a conversation with a very successful entrepreneur? They're obnoxious. Like, they don't realize it's a bit of a lottery. I understand hard work, all that, but there's a little bit of a luck in it involved.
The Nazi Waffen SS was even invited to attend an event in the House of Commons is appalling. That he was honored during the address of the Ukrainian president is an inexcusable
Mark Strahl just got a fresh new tight perm.
The Waffen SS committed numerous atrocities in Poland.
Old school
members
perm.
of the Polish government have now demanded an apology.
You don't see
for
that
this
style very often
international
anymore.
Embarrassment. This has become a diplomatic disaster requiring immediate action from the Prime Minister. So will he finally take responsibility, do the right thing, and apologize?
And I got a perm.
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, as the member opposite knows full well, it was the Speaker of the House who invited this individual.
Tory's got to get off it. Stop it. Like, they're not going to give it. Trudeau didn't even show up. He doesn't give a shit.
The government, the Prime Minister,
He doesn't care.
or the Ukrainian
He's in
delegation.
Auschwitz, hanging out,
Caused
just checking it
enormous
out,
hurt to
sightseeing.
communities across this country, including Polish Canadians, and for that, the Speaker has apologized. He has resigned. That was the right thing to do. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Chilliwack Hope.
Prime Minister and his office, who organized President Zelensky's visit down to the most minute detail. Every moment of the visit was planned, and every guest in this House should have been vetted or was vetted by the Prime Minister's office. But somehow, a member of the Nazi Waffen SS was not only allowed to attend, but was celebrated on the floor of this House. The Prime Minister's office organized the entire event. The Prime Minister's office vetted the entire guest list. So when will he finally take responsibility, come out of hiding, and apologize?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, my conservative
Where is
colleague
Trudeau?
opposite continues to spread false information.
And again, I don't want to hear her say the same thing again, but they're asking the same question. Where is Trudeau? That's the funny thing. He should be answering these questions. I don't think that I think he knew he wasn't going to be able to take it. Old Peter Pan had some really sassy things to say. Like, he just avoided it. He called in sick. He took a sick day.
Chamber knew ahead of time. Thank you.
Nobody knew ahead of time.
The honourable member for Mégantic-L'Érable. The Liberal Prime Minister has once again embarrassed all Canadians, and there is outrage around the world. His lack of judgment, his negligence, or simply his incompetence are once again making the news worldwide. In fact, Le Monde, a French newspaper, reported in the midst of Zelensky's visit to Canada, there was a misguided tribute to a former soldier in a Nazi division. A headline in the Czech Republic, more fuel for the Russians' fire. In Canada, a Nazi veteran was applauded in front of Zelensky. Will the Prime Minister, for once, take responsibility and apologize for hurting
Now he's probably going to show up and apologize.
Around the world.
Say, oh, sorry. Whoops.
The Honourable Government House Leader. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today, all members of this House called for the House Speaker's resignation. We all realized that
it's
it
so
was
boring.
his
You've said this
decision
between
which
yesterday
led
and
to
today.
the incident on
25
Friday,
times?
which was shameful for us as members of
gotta
Parliament,
be.
shameful for us as Canadians.
They should have given you some PR or some advice in other ways to steer the conversation. Flip it back a little bit. Depoliticize this political issue.
And to stick to the facts.
The honourable member for Mégantic-L'Érable. In Finland, it was said the Canadian Parliament made an embarrassing mistake during the Ukrainian president's visit. The guest of honour had served in Nazi Germany. In the Netherlands, it says a standing ovation for a former SS officer in Canada's House of Commons. Washington Post, they've said that a Nazi was honoured in Parliament. The news has circled the globe, and the Liberal Prime Minister who invited President Zelensky to address the House, he is solely and ultimately responsible for this embarrassment and the damage it has done to the Ukrainian people and to Canada's reputation. When will the Prime Minister come out of hiding and apologize?
It's a good question. For the 25th time,
The
Lord.
House Leader.
Oh, God.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I've already answered this question. The Conservative members know the facts. I would invite them once again to remain on the facts and not say things that are incorrect. Thank you.
Member for Port Moody Coquitlam.
Mr. Speaker, people are seeing a rising tide of organized hate and hate-related violence. This week, a whites-only Mums and Tots poster was put up at a bus stop in
I heard
my
about that.
community.
That's awful.
The residents of Port Moody, Coquitlam, Port Coquitlam, and Morin Belcarra are outraged. They want the government to take stronger action against hate in their communities, yet the Liberals are nowhere to be found. Will the government listen to Canadians and take concrete action to combat all forms of hate, discrimination, racism, and violence?
I don't know if that's all the Liberals' fault, but good question.
Too are outraged by what we've recently learned, and we take the issue of hate, discrimination in all forms extremely seriously. We're going to continue to work with local communities on how best to take these concrete action, but make no mistake, Mr. Speaker, we as a government feel that hate has no place in this country, and we will do everything we can to ensure that communities remain safe.
Honourable member for Edmonton Strathcona.
Mr. Speaker, Danielle Smith and her Conservative government are threatening to take Albertans out of the Canadian pension plan. This is a page that directly comes from the leader of the Conservative Party when he said he would cut the CPP. People need to know that their futures are secure, and of course, we have heard nothing from the Conservative leader of the opposition. Canadians don't want Conservatives risking their pensions. This isn't Smith's money. This isn't the Conservatives' money. This is Canadians' money. Will the Prime Minister do everything he can to protect Albertans and Canadians' pensions from this absurd plan?
Ooh, she's pissed.
The Honourable Minister of Employment.
Mr. Speaker, plan. Every single Edmontonian, every single Albertan that I have spoken to on this issue, including email in my inbox this very day, Mr. Speaker, is about the government of Alberta keeping their hands off of Canadian pensions, making sure it stays under the management of Canada, Mr. Speaker. People have paid into the Canada Pension Plan. They wanted to be there in their retirement. We will do everything in our power to keep the pensions in the hands of Canadians and in the CBP.
All right, getting fired up here. Yeah, getting fired up.
Member for Northwest Territories.
Mr. Speaker, this year marked Canada's worst wildfire season on record, especially in the Northwest Territories, with 3 of our 4 largest communities and nearly 70% of our population evacuated. So $28 million recently announced for the NBT by the Government of Canada is very much appreciated. But along with real costs of fighting the fires, the evacuation resulted in many businesses that had to close down for weeks. Can the Minister of Northern Affairs please give an update on our government's plan to support businesses in the Northwest Territories as they get back up and running again after the evacuations? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Minister of Northern Affairs.
What's up?
First of all, I'd like to thank the member for his incredible work in helping his constituents during an unprecedented wildfire season in Northwest Territories. As the member mentioned, our government has been there during the worst of the fires and will continue to be there as the communities continue to bounce back from the wildfires. As Northerners know, small businesses are the backbone of the economy, and I can guarantee the member for Northwest Territories that more support is on its way.
Surrey White Rock.
Global Affairs, the Privy Council, the Diplomatic Protocol Office, the
Professional
RCMP.
business suit.
What do they all have in common? 1, they have massive resources to vet visitors in this place. 2, they all report to the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister is trying to shift the blame to the Liberal Speaker, but it's him and him alone that bears the responsibility of a successful state visit. The Prime Minister is in Ottawa today. Will he take responsibility today for his international diplomatic disaster and apologize to Canadians and our allies?
Tired of these same questions, but I guess, what are you going to do?
I just want to make a quick comment that the Speaker is just a Speaker. We're not belonging to any party when we're in this position, so I would just...
I don't know about that.
I'd rather not call it out of order.
I don't know if that's true.
The honourable member, the honourable government house leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This question has been answered several times. The member knows that what she is alleging is not true. The truth of the matter is it was the Speaker who took these actions.
As far as asking the same question, she asked it in one of the more interesting ways. They got to stop asking this lady questions,
The House
though.
leader lost all credibility when she moved to whitewash the official record and asked all of us to pretend that this diplomatic disaster never happened. It did happen. The whole
Go get her,
world
Carrie Lynn.
saw it. It happened under this Prime Minister's watch, and he's refusing to take responsibility. Again, he is in Ottawa today. Will he do the honourable thing, the right thing, stand in his place and apologize?
Nope.
The honourable government house
He's getting his Halloween costume organized. Calm down, Carrie Lynn.
Speaker, the member opposite would know that when egregious acts happen in this place, that they are sometimes struck from the record. In fact, when the member from St. Albert read some very inappropriate remarks into the record, they were struck from the record. Mr. Speaker, that is something that we took seriously. The House decided not to do this. Again, had members in this House been aware of what they were doing at that time, I feel very confident no one would have stood and applauded this individual.
What she's saying right there.
Mr. Speaker, it's not just the reputation of Parliament that has been sullied, it's the reputation of this country on the world stage.
Right.
This isn't just a parliamentary issue, it's a full-blown diplomatic one. Ian Bremmer of the Eurasia Group said yesterday,
This is a good point.
this was the worst week for Canadian diplomacy in I can't remember how long. Diplomacy is the responsibility of the Government of Canada. So when will the Prime Minister take responsibility for this diplomatic disaster?
It's a good one. Again, asking the same damn question in an interesting way,
Speaker, I
but
don't think
boring
any
answer.
member
Here we
in
go.
This House disagrees at how horrific what happened on Friday was. In fact, that's why every single member in this place called
They're
for
getting rowdy in the
resignation
background.
of the Speaker, because he brought not only shame and embarrassment to this Parliament, but
They're putting a
indeed to
lot
all
on Anthony
Canadians,
Rada,
as I
man.
have said several
Like,
times in this House. That is why he has apologized. It
Blame
is
the
why
RCMP.
he has resigned. And
Blame
we
something
now
that people
we
don't
must
like
move
anyway.
Forward, but we recognize the hurt that this has caused to communities across this country as well as around the world. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Wellington Halton Hills.
Mr. Speaker, the Speaker bears responsibility, but so too does the Prime Minister. It was the Prime Minister in his office that made a decision on short notice to request a joint address for President Zelensky on the floor of this House. That decision came with consequences. That decision came with responsibilities, some of which we are witnessing around the world today. So again, when will the Prime Minister, for once, take some responsibility for this diplomatic disaster?
Go Michael Chong. That's good. The same question, but hammering it home. But here comes a boring answer. Mention your grandfather again.
The first and only Conservative MP that has actually acknowledged that this was the responsibility of the Speaker, which is why the Speaker took responsibility, and it's why he resigned. And so I want to thank
Not going to thread that needle, baby. That ain't going to happen.
the facts, which we haven't heard from most of our Conservative colleagues. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
And my back is sore. Oh.
The honourable member for Avignon-La Métis, Matane-Matapédia. Mr. Speaker, last week, during the Climate Ambition Summit, we learned of Canada's intention to double oil production in Newfoundland by 2030.
Woo!
Double oil production.
She's well
Conservatives
dressed.
even applauded the government yesterday on this subject.
All the politicians
Hooray
are so
for
well dressed.
Canada, a major oil-producing country, as the Minister of the Environment would say. Mr. Speaker, in the fight against climate change, does the Minister of the Environment think it's good news when the Conservatives applaud him? The Honourable Minister of the Environment.
It's funny. Oh,
Mr.
yes.
Speaker.
Minister of the Environment. That's what he looks like. He looks like an environment guy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Can't afford a
I thank
haircut.
my colleague for her question. Last week,
Hippie.
there were two pieces of good news. There are 2 new Canadian sites that will be added to UNESCO's World Heritage Sites. 2 sites. That might not be a good news for the Bloc Québécois. One of them would have been an oil drilling site if it hadn't been for the hard work of environmentalists, Indigenous people, and the government of Quebec. So Anticosti is now a UNESCO World Heritage Site. The honourable member for Avignon-La Métis, Matane-Matapédia. Mr. Speaker, 2023 is on track to be the hottest year on record.
Hot as
British
hell.
Columbia, Alberta, the
weather.
Northwest Territories, Nova Scotia, and Quebec have suffered forest fires on a dramatic, unprecedented scale.
That's true.
Biodiversity is threatened. Oceans are warming to record levels. Yet the Liberal Conservative coalition applauds increased drilling in the Atlantic. Listening to them applaud, you'd think we didn't need to reduce our dependence on oil, we needed to increase production. What will it take for them to realize that they are playing a very dangerous game for humanity?
Good question. Are we going to get the
Minister
environment?
of the Environment
Yeah, here
and
we go.
Climate
I like
Change.
this guy. He's all right.
Mr. Speaker, if the Bloc
It's little
was
hands.
as enthusiastic about working with us to fight climate change, things would go even better. But, Mr. Speaker, Canada is the only major oil-producing country to be invited to the Climate Ambition Summit last week. Why? Because we have the most ambitious goals to reduce methane emissions, because we are the only G20 country to have eliminated subsidies for fossil fuels. No other G20 country did it. We did it 2 years earlier than expected, and the Prime Minister said we would cap emissions from oil and gas. We are the only country in the world, Mr. Speaker, to have made that commitment.
The honourable member for Selkirk, Interlake, Eastman.
These Liberals have embarrassed Canada, insulted the Jewish community, undermined our Ukrainian allies, and disrespected our veterans. And this Prime Minister refuses to accept any responsibility. He's either willfully or ignorantly discarded his duty to protect President Zelensky from this international disaster. Because of his negligence, Liberals have helped fuel Russia's propaganda machine against Ukraine. So will the Prime Minister finally accept responsibility, stand in this House, and apologize to all Canadians and to our Ukrainian allies.
Still wearing the Ukrainian tie. He's got a ribbon, his handkerchief. Oh, God. Turn her off. Stop it.
Acknowledge this individual was the Speaker's and the Speaker's alone. For that, he has apologized. For that, he has resigned. Mr. Speaker, this is something that has brought shame and embarrassment to all of us as parliamentarians.
What about your grandfather?
To all Canadians. It has hurt Canadian communities across this country. Jewish Canadians, Ukrainian communities, any community that was impacted by the Holocaust. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Kildonan St. Paul.
Here on Friday, Parliament stood and honoured a Nazi. It is unbelievable that this happened, and the Canadian people deserve to be represented with dignity in this House and on the world stage, and that was taken away from them. The Liberals have so profoundly failed Canadians. This is beyond shameful and embarrassing, and it will never be forgotten. Now the Speaker has resigned, but the Prime Minister bears responsibility.
Interesting choice.
He is in charge. This happened under his watch. Will he finally do the right thing and apologize to Canadians?
Probably not.
The Honourable Government House Leader.
I think we all agree with my honourable colleague that we wish this had never happened, because it did bring shame and embarrassment to every single member of this House, as well as every single Canadian. Unfortunately, it was the Speaker and the Speaker alone who chose to invite this individual and acknowledge this individual in the gallery, unbeknownst to any member of Parliament in here, which is why every single member present stood and applauded, because they were led to believe this individual was someone who he wasn't. We know that that was not the case. The Speaker has taken responsibility and he has resigned.
Kildonan St. Paul.
There is no more time for Liberal excuses, Mr. Speaker, and more deflections. Canadians deserve far better than that. Friday was supposed to be a day where Canadians and Ukrainians were able to come together and stand against Putin's brutal regime and their illegal, brutal, deadly invasion of Ukraine. The President of Ukraine was in Parliament. The world's eyes were on Canada, but due to Liberal negligence and incompetence, a Nazi was honored at that time, Mr. Speaker. Canada has been profoundly embarrassed, and there will be lasting international consequences. The Prime Minister cannot escape his responsibility to this House and to Canadians. The buck stops with him, Mr. Speaker. Will he be apologizing to Canada and our world allies, yes or no?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Again, I would ask my honourable colleagues to please stick
to the facts.
They all know that this was the decision of the Speaker of the House of Commons to both invite this individual and recognize him without informing a single member of Parliament, the Prime Minister, the government, or the Ukrainian delegation. We all feel completely embarrassed and shamed by this fact. And for this, the Speaker has not only apologized, he has...
Okay, that answer's really old by now. However, they're getting better at asking the questions. They're getting more pissed off. But I would prefer to see some other questions today, to see some other people speaking.
In my writing,
what do we got?
Of Laval,
an American politician. No, he's
have
French.
Shared with me
must be from
their
Vermont.
Concerns about the rising cost of living in terms of food prices,
Bob Dole,
and housing costs. Could the Minister of Innovation, Science and Industry please inform the House of the steps the government is taking to make life more affordable for Canadians? Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Honourable Minister of Innovation. Mr. Speaker, I'd first like to thank the member for Laval-les-Îles for his work. In fact, Mr. Speaker, we know that the people of Laval are focused on the work. We've taken concrete action to help people at a time when the cost of food is the #1 issue. Mr. Speaker, this morning I met with major manufacturers to tell them 3 things. First, to express the frustration people are feeling throughout the country, including the people of Laval, saying that the cost of groceries is the #1 issue. Number 2, I ask them to be a part of the solution because we all have a role to play to help Canadians during a difficult time. Mr. Speaker, I can assure people that with the member of Laval-les-Îles, we will continue to fight. The Honourable Member for Edmonton Millwoods.
Mr. Speaker, I was honoured to introduce the National Holocaust Monument Bill in this House, which received unanimous support from all parties. This monument helps Canadians learn more about the horrors of the Holocaust. But never did I imagine that in this same House of Commons, a Nazi would be invited and honoured in this place. Mr. Speaker, when will the Prime Minister stand up, take responsibility for this massive insult, and apologize to Canadians?
Get him, Tim. It's a good question.
You know, my family walked into Auschwitz.
Family.
And only my grandfather and great uncle.
Hanging on to it,
out.
baby.
Never in a million years would I have imagined that the Speaker of the House of Commons would invite someone who fought for the Nazis.
They're dumping it on Anthony Rota, man. That it's a shitty way to treat him, man. Even it just couldn't be all of his fault. It couldn't, like somebody else.
Broken. We are hurt by this. I personally am
grandfather?
incredibly hurt by this because never in my life would I have ever done this had I known otherwise. And I assure you that no other member would have done that either. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Can you rub my feet?
Speaker, last Friday, as a result of this Prime Minister's inaction, a Nazi veteran was allowed access into this chamber. Although this person was invited by the Speaker, it is the responsibility of the government to organize and ensure the security of foreign dignitaries. Further, both the Prime Minister and this individual were present in the same reception room in West Block after the speeches. There is no way this international embarrassment is solely on the Speaker. This inept Liberal government is responsible as well. Will the Prime Minister finally take responsibility, do the right thing, and apologize to Canadians?
He's not gonna.
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, the allegation that my honourable colleague made is simply false. That did not happen. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
She should start just not responding.
Mr. Speaker, what happened Friday is unacceptable. We gave a standing ovation.
Gerard Deltel is going to straighten it out now.
Reputation has been tarnished around the world. Believe it or not, yesterday the government did something
wants to kick a dead horse
by asking to erase the facts, the truth, and history. What cowardice, Mr. Speaker. To erase history is to condemn ourselves to relive it. It's typical of this cowardly government, which
I haven't seen that one yet.
Any responsibility.
Nice.
When will the Prime Minister rise in the House and recognize that he made a serious mistake and apologize on behalf of all Canadians to the world?
I bet you he gets pretty rowdy after a six-pack.
Mr. Speaker, as my honourable colleague knows, when really horrible things happen in this House, in committees, as was the case with the member for St. Albert, who read extremely concerning comments into the record, it was erased. If the
Whoever
House
made
had
that
wanted
mistake
to do
must have been a conservative. I haven't been following this stuff very
would that
long.
have been?
We're just
because nobody knew
honing
ahead
in.
of time what was happening. If they'd known, I'm sure that nobody in this House would have stood to applaud. I'm certain of that.
Mississauga Malton.
Mr. Speaker, in my writing of Mississauga Malton, I know that people are concerned about crime. And they want to know what our government is doing to make sure that people are safe.
Quinder, Gahar?
This is why I was pleased to see the House unanimously pass Bill C-48 last week, which will help ensure that violent, repeat offenders do not get bail. Can the Minister of Justice tell us more about this progress of this legislation and what the government is doing to improve
My mom was
the
right. A
safety and
plain white
community
shirt is a
across
good look.
Canada? Thank you.
The Honourable Minister of Justice.
Thank you. I'd like to start by thanking my colleague from Mississauga Malton for that question and for his important advocacy. Repeat violent offenders don't belong on our streets. Everyone in this chamber agrees on that proposition. As a government, we have a job to do in keeping people safe.
That's the face of justice in Canada.
Of the House of Commons sitting this fall, we passed our bail reform legislation. Our our plan for keeping people safe. MPs on that day put politics aside for the safety of Canadians.
I like his
I'm
tie,
hoping the
though.
Senate will do the exact
And his
same
cufflinks.
and help make this bill become law. We need safe streets in this country. This bill is going to help us get there. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
He's an original badass. Wears his watch upside down.
Mr. Speaker, in British Columbia alone, more than 1,600 people have died because of toxic, unregulated drugs since the start of this year. This summer, I traveled to Portugal, where I saw that things could be different. We could have a nationwide evidence-based plan, including decriminalization, harm reduction, treatment, recovery, and prevention services. But the Liberals would rather stand by their patchwork approach that's not working. So will this government right their wrongs by immediately delivering a compassionate and coordinated plan to respond to the toxic drug crisis?
Those colors don't match at all, not even close.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'd like to thank
She's
my
wearing a
colleague
bathrobe.
from the NDP.
I just came from the bathroom.
Step by step in understanding that the toxic drug supply in this country is killing those who we love, families, communities. No one is left unharmed by this, Mr. Speaker, but that's why we've taken a comprehensive approach, province by province, working with our counterparts to make sure that we are saving lives. Decriminalization in BC was the first step to that, but we need a responsible, compassionate framework that balances public health to public safety. I continue to hope to work with him on this.
And now I've got to leave. I'm going to the spa. That's why I'm wearing my bathrobe.
Technology is crucial to the fight against climate change. In that fight, one of Canada's leading agencies, Sustainable Development Technology Canada, has had allegations of wrongdoing with the way they've spent their funding and the way they have treated their staff. It's yet again another example of incompetency.
For style,
Canadians
black on
deserve
black
to
is
know
good
how
too.
the government makes decisions on spending for clean technology. The minister needs to release the full report in this House so Canadians can see the transparency they deserve and paid for. Whistleblowers stood up and risked their jobs. Will the minister do the same thing and table the full report for all of this House and for Canadians?
Yeah, here.
The Honourable Minister of Innovation.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank my colleague for his question. Mr. Speaker, there's no point of trying to politicize everything that's happening, Mr. Speaker. The moment that we were alerted of allegation, Mr. Speaker, we asked for third-party report to investigate and to bring back a report. I can assure the member in this House and all Canadians that we'll look at the report, we'll take all the necessary actions, Mr. Speaker. We expect the highest standards of ethics and professionalism when it comes to agencies that are funded by the Government of Canada. Canadians can be reassured that we'll take all appropriate actions.
And we have for question period today.
Well, that sounds like that's question period for today. So I guess we'll wrap it up. It was pretty interesting. Yeah, we're gonna get out. That was quite a bit of fun. Anyways, I'm going to be trying to do as many of these as I possibly can. I'm going to cut this one up now. I was doing this one live. We're going to learn about politics. We're going to have some fun making fun of these clowns in the sausage factory, clown circus. But that's it. We'll be back for the next one. Stay tuned. Thanks for watching. Oh, like, subscribe, all of that. Yeah, subscribe, like it. That'd be great. Okay. Thank you.